This is Parsha's Vayechi. This is the Parsha that Yaakov Avinu has basically finished his purpose. He's no longer necessary in terms of the next stage of development of Klal Yisrael. Now we're dealing with the Shvatim. And as is the custom, the minhag of all the great leaders of the Jewish people, just before they leave this world, they will give up a bracha. In those days, a bracha was not so much just well-wishing of good things to happen. A bracha, in fact, was a nevuah, it was a prophecy. The person giving the bracha, Yaakov Avinu, or Avraham, Yitzchak, or later on Moshe Rabbeinu, it was a nevuah. They had prophecy, Ruach HaKodesh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told them exactly what to say. They could see the essence of the person or the shevet they were talking about, and they could give a bracha, blessing, based upon what the development of that particular person or shevet was going to be in the future. So it was a way of understanding your specific purpose and where you're going, and basically have to work with that. So Yaakov, in fact, is exactly that, but he also does something a little unusual, which the Chumash speaks about, alludes to, but doesn't actually finish it. Just before Yaakov dies, he calls together all the sons, the Parsha tells us, and he does it specifically, one of the few places you actually find in the Chumash that the words Ketzia mean, the end of days is actually mentioned, the actual end of history, right? Later on Parshas Balak also, there's an allusion to it as well. We know it's coming, it has to happen at some point in time, but the Torah does not really speak about the Yemos Mashiach very much, certainly not about the Chesed Mason, at least not on an obvious level. The Gemara in Sanhedrin talks about how different verses allude to the Chesed Mason, resurrection of the dead, and different periods in the future. But here there's an overt reference, and Yaakov, he wants to tell the Shvat, he wants to tell his sons what to expect, how to contribute, how to bring it about, because maybe it will happen in their lifetime. Because we're talking about Tikkun Olam, and every generation has the potential to be able to rectify the Chet of Adam Rishon and bring Mashiach at some point. Now that's the whole process that's going on historically. So Yaakov feels compelled to give over this information to the Shvatim. He calls them together, and then the Pasuk, continues on. We're all like hanging there saying, okay, yeah, well, tell us also. They didn't live to see it, but we're here, and Ketzia is a very real possibility. 9 times, so what are you going to say? We know what should we know in the end? But the Torah doesn't complete the thought. Yaakov does not to give over any information that we can see in the Chumash itself, and the Medrash, the Gemara, the Talmud explains why. The Talmud in Pesachim tells us why. What happened? What actually went wrong? The Talmud says that the Shechina left Yaakov Avinu at that time, and even though the Torah doesn't talk about it, Yaakov doesn't question this, and he just goes on with the actual brachas, the Shvatim, the individual specific brachas at that time of the Shvatim. The Gemara goes into more detail. The Gemara explains that Yaakov was upset by the development. He thought it meant something negative, because after all, we have a history of certain negative events taking place vis-a-vis the forefathers, the Avos. And Yaakov says to his sons, like, maybe something has come out of me. There's somebody here who's not fitting to have this nevuah, right? Maybe I didn't complete the process I was supposed to have completed at the end, right? Because after all, Yishmael came from Avraham, and Esav of Russia came from Yitzchak, and maybe even though there's 12 of you, and you also need one family, maybe it's possible one of you are not fitting to hear this nevuah, and it's a problem. So the Gemara says they were taken aback, and they wanted to reassure their father they were in fact fitting for this nevuah, and that there's another reason why HaKadosh Baruch Hu took it away. Perhaps not we should know this information, but there's something wrong with us. So therefore, the Gemara says, they tell Yaakov, Shema Yisrael, because he's also called Yisrael, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Right? So it's Mantfil over here, they're davening, what is this supposed to mean? So the Gemara explains that they're indicating to Yaakov that just like God is one in your heart, likewise is God one in our heart, our mind, and we're kosher, we've done tshuva, everything's beseder. The reason why the nevuah left is not because of us, because of some other reason, because Baruch Hu may know that we don't know. So Yaakov comes back and he says, Baruch Shem Kavod Machus Olam Ve'ed. He completes the tefillah over here, because we also say Shema, and Baruch Shem Kavod Machus Olam Ve'ed. And it goes on, even the Gemara doesn't go past that. From the words of Yaakov, he seems to accept their response of saying the Shema, and he adds to it, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Olam Ve'ed, blessed be the name of his glorious kingdom forever, right? The two psukim we say at least twice a day, and the Gemara goes on. But the question is, what's the conclusion? Is the conclusion simply that the Nevuah was taken away for a different reason, and the Shvatim were okay, or we're left hanging over here? So the Zohar explains that when Yaakov said Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusom Ve'ed, he wasn't actually, agreeing with them. He wasn't saying, okay, I hear what you're saying. You guys sound perfectly okay. I realize that all the tshuva has been done, and there must be another reason why Hashem has taken His Shekhinah away from me, and I lost that Nevuah. Let's move on to the brachas. The Zohar says that the Shema has 25 letters, and Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Omed should have also had 25 letters to match the Shema, 50 altogether, like the Nun Shari Bina. But Yaakov suspected that something was not quite right here. There's a certain unity, what they call Raza, the Achdusa, the mystery of the unity of the Nusa of the faith. Yaakov realized that something wasn't quite right with the Shvatim, otherwise he would have had the prophecy of Ketz Yamin. And therefore he left one letter out of Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso to get 24 letters instead, not 25. And the completion of the 25 doesn't happen until later on in history. In the first verse of Sefer Vayikra, Parshas Vayikra, is talking about the Mishkan. And the last, after Hashem calls Moshe Rabbeinu, the last part of the verse has 25 letters to make up for the 25 letters that Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso should have had and didn't have, and that's the tikkun for the Shvatim. So the Gemara and the Chumash makes it seem like they're okay. But apparently, according to the Zohar, there was something lacking over here, not quite right, and Yaakov acknowledges that. This becomes Musar in a sense, that only gets fixed up once the Mishkan, which is the Gilui of the Shekhinah, and the ultimate Achdus of the universe, finally comes into being as the forerunner for the Beis HaMikdash. Eventually, the final Beis HaMikdash that will finally come. We can finally fulfill the words, B'yomahu Yishem Echad Hashem Echad. On that day, God will be one. Mashiach will come. Everything will be perfect the way it's supposed to have been then, and it wasn't. And Yaakov noted that. And we have to ask the question: what was missing? What's wrong over here? So, if you look at the words Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso Le'olam Ve'ed, and you take the Rosh Tevos, which means the first letter of each of the words, right? So they actually spell a word. The word B'Shchem, or two words, B'Shchem, Lamed Vav. Lamed Vav, we know from Chanukah, is always an allusion to the Or HaGanuz, the hidden light of creation, the light that God put in the first day of creation, and subsequently we hit it because he looked down in history, the Gemara says, and saw there'll be evil people who will abuse that light, and therefore it's not the light of the light bulbs or the sun, the moon, the stars, because that comes later on. And Rashi points out the hiding takes place on the first day, hence the name Or HaGanuz. And the Or HaGanuz is a reward, the Gemara says, for Tzadikim Masi Lavo. But the Leshem explains that this light is not just a reward for later on, but rather from that point onward, from creation onward, that only Tzadikim will be able to access the light. The actual hiding of the light means it's being hidden from Rishoyim. The Leshem explains that it takes a person's, a person has a tzaddik. It has to be a tzaddik, it has a perfect midos. The person's midos, the person's personal spiritual level will either give them access to the Or HaGanuz and allow them to see the world the way God sees the world, or it will blind them to it. So two people can look at the exact same reality. One is a tzaddik, one is a rasha, or even just a benoni. And the tzaddik will see things, will see the hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in creation and history, and therefore be able to respond to it appropriately. But the person who does not have the proper spiritual midos will not be able to see the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore will be blinded by teva, by nature in the end. So if that's what Yaakov is saying, then what is he actually indicating by these words? What is he hinting to with the words B'Shchem Lamed Vav? So he's telling the brothers that whatever went wrong in Shechem, right, when you sold Yosef, has not been rectified completely. If it was rectified completely, then I wouldn't have lost the prophecy. There's something in your mind still, as much as you say, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, there's still something missing in your perception of the reality of God in terms of His unity within creation. which translates into being able to see the hand of God on all levels and in every aspect of life. Somehow that's not real. And the litmus test over here is whether or not HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God is prepared to reveal to you Ketzi Yamin, because that's what Ketzi means all about the yet. So we see that Yaakov is right. Where do we see that Yaakov is right? Towards the end of the Parsha, after Yaakov does die, the brothers speak through Menashe, and they tell Yosef that our father told us to tell you before he died, that after he dies, that you shouldn't treat us in any negative way. You shouldn't take revenge. Rashi explains that while Yaakov was still alive, they got together for family meals because, of course, that was the right thing to do, but once Yaakov died, Yosef wasn't sure who to place at the head of the table, so to avoid the whole controversy, he avoided all these get-togethers, and they thought maybe he was still angry, taking revenge, whatever. But the brothers thought that Yosef was planning revenge, taking the Kama. So they sent this message. They were concerned, they were afraid. They sent this message to Yosef that our father told us to tell you, and Yosef knows that's not true. Yosef knows they're lying. Yosef knows they're making up the story because Yosef knows that Yaakov would never have suspected him for a second that he would take revenge after he died. So obviously they're making this thing up. So Yosef says to them, he says, Ani tachas Elokim, am I in place of God? Look, you tried to kill me, didn't you? You tried to get rid of me. Could you do it? No, because God runs the world. So if God runs the world, that means basically that if you're meant to live, I can't kill you. And if you're meant to die, I can't save you. I'm not in the place of God over here. That's the Hashem Echad. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Echad means that everything's a function of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, whether it's revealed or hidden, and you have to see that. Right? I explained to you how all these events occurred for the sake of bringing about the survival of Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people. It was all Min Shemayim. I accept that, and that's why I'm not angry. The fact that you're afraid, that you're concerned about me and my intentions, seems to imply that you're giving me more power over you in the situation than you should. And Yaakov sensed that. And that's why he questioned them. And that's why their response was not good enough. So then, which letter is missing? Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Umed seems to have all the letters it's supposed to have. Right? So which letter should be there? So you could say the Vav. The Vav alludes to Yosef, the sphere of Yesod. It's the 6th millennium. Alludes to Mashiach. It's called the Goel. It's redemption. Yeah, the Vav itself. So really it should say, probably, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Shem Echad, U Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso Le'olam Ve'ed, because that's what Kabbalah says. Kabbalah says the Shema is the upper Yichud, the Yichud of Shemayim, where the angels live. And they have no questions about HaKadosh Baruch Hu's dominion over all of creation. They're not fooled by Eli Hester Panim because they're not subject to Eli Hester Panim. When we say the Shema, we're talking about that. We're talking about the Yichud of HaKadosh Baruch Hu on the level of Malachim. On Yom Kippur, we say Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso Le'olam Ve'ed out loud because that's the statement of the angels, which we can't say out loud all year round. Explains the Leshem. One of the reasons why is because it's supposed to be a secret. It's an emunah. We can't see it so well in everyday life. Bad things happen to good people. Good things happen to bad people. There's question marks about history. But B'yamahu Yishem Echad Hashem Echad, and Mashiach finally comes and gets rid of all the evil, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu can once again reveal himself as he was back at the time of Adam Rishon before the Chet. So then everything will become clear. That's what the Gemara says, there'll be no Yitzhahor anymore in Yemos Mashiach, because we will see HaKadosh Baruch Hu as clearly as the Malachim see him up there. We will see him as clearly down in the world over here. So Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, U'Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso Le'olam Ve'ed, meaning that just like the angels have a clear picture of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Hashgacha Pratis and Shemayim, we also have that clear picture down here as well. In the meantime, until we get to such a madrega, and we're able to achieve that clarity, there's a disconnection. There's the Shema, but not U'Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Ve'ed. Just Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso Ve'ed. When the Goyel comes, the Redeemer of the Jewish people comes, and he finally reveals HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and all the evil's gone, the Vav will appear. It will be there. Because the reality of the Shema will be the reality down here as well. And they'll be all one idea, all one verse. And that's what Yaakov saw, and that's what Yaakov indicated, and that's where the Nevuah left them, and that's what we're going to have to rectify and fix up, and it has been what history's been all about over the last couple thousands of years. Just getting that Vav, the beginning of Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus V'ed. When a person is real with the Kodesh Baruch Hu and Hashgacha Pratis on the level of Shemayim down on earth, they are the completion of that statement.